the team of Universe 3 was most likely the strongest team besides Universe 7 and Universe 11, having a pretty solid roster of fighters and most of them having at least some level of screen time, except for a very few, as we will see shortly. So with that in consideration, I had plenty of material to work with to expand more upon the fighters of Universe 3. So with that being said, let's start with our first fighter. Nigrisshi is probably one of the fighters I was most interested about for the Tournament of Power, and not just because of his cool design, but also because of his first appearance in the anime really left me a lasting impression. In case you don't remember, during his first appearance, Nigrisshi seemed quite confident in his abilities, and not just him. The God of Destruction and Supreme Kayoo of Universe 3 seems to respect Nigrisshi quite a lot, to the point the Kaioshin said he was the strongest modified warrior of the universe. So naturally, I was very hyped about Nigrisshi. I mean, it was quite clear they were setting up Nigrisshi as one of the key fighters of the Tournament of Power. But then he was just casually eliminated by Base Kaba without doing anything of worth. And yeah, I know about the recent Base Kaba meme about him being stronger than Gogeta Super Saiyan 4, but for a revision, Kaba is not particularly strong, and when it comes to Nigrisshi, I would justify the hype and make him the actual strongest fighter of Universe 3, much stronger than Base Kaba. So as a quick overview of Nigrisshi, once upon a time, he was a genius scientist who started transferring his consciousness to robotic bodies, and after countless of iterations, Nigrisshi android became one of the most powerful fighters of Universe 3, one that was even respected by the God of Destruction, Mule. So, to start off, one of the strongest abilities of Nigrisshi is that he had virtually unlimited energy and stamina, similar to the androids of Universe 7, which also means Nigrisshi energy is undetectable from normal means. To complement with his unlimited energy, Nigrisshi had very fast regeneration, meaning that he is borderline impossible to put down, let alone kill. Nigrisshi can also teleport or partially teleport parts of his body, similar to the technique used by Janemba. Other abilities include portal creation, invisibility, holograms, barriers, key clones, and extension of his body. But really, the strongest aspect of Nigrisshi is his intellect, having a mind that is comparable to a super advanced computer, allowing Nigrisshi to rapidly identify weaknesses and strengths of his opponents and allies. Sometimes by just looking at them, he can also quickly learn how techniques works, allowing Nigrisshi to mimic the techniques of other fighters. He also has integrated a computer interface which allows him to detect and keep track with a radar the energies and power levels of others, which of course helps Nigrisshi to not get caught off guard by enemies and also plan out the most optimal strategies while in the battlefield. Nigrisshi not only have a wide variety of supportive techniques, but also his offensive capabilities are quite high as well, especially when it comes to energy attacks. Nigrisshi can transform his arms into powerful buster cannons, which can be used to fire energy blasts or to create energy source for close combat. And let me tell you something, Nigrisshi can and will absolutely abuse his unlimited energy to constantly attack enemies with very powerful energy attacks, which can vary from basic ki blast to charged energy waves. One minor weakness of his arm cannons, and even his overall body structure, is that Nigrishi's close combat capabilities are weaker than his other combat aspects, which it can limit his overall offensive power a bit. Also, Nigrishi's body is relatively fragile, and even though it can be argued that he doesn't really need a resistant body because of his regeneration, it also means his body can be partially destroyed with relative ease, which cannot defeat Nigrisshi indefinitely. It can really slow him down by forcing him to constantly regenerate and making him fight more defensively. rather than letting him be allowed offense without any kind of restraint. But his biggest weakness, by far, is his arrogance. Nigrisshi tends to underestimate his opponents, and considering his great power and intellect, it is not entirely unjustified. But the truth is that an experienced and strong opponent can definitely take advantage of Nigrisshi's arrogance. What's more, even though Nigrisshi is virtually immortal, there are still ways that can be used to temporarily restrain his body, such as using energy or telekinesis, or with more advanced techniques such as sealing his android body away. Although Nigrisshi can just transfer his consciousness from one body to another, it takes time for him to be able to fight again after doing so, meaning that sealing his body effectively, even if it's not sealing Nigrisshi himself, it is still a very good countermeasure to remove Nigrisshi from a fight. So as a quick summary, Nigrishi's main fighting style revolves around abusing his regeneration and unlimited energy to the most of his capabilities, mostly disregarding defensive techniques and focusing in his most powerful and endless energy attacks to destroy his enemies. Nigrisshi has plenty of other supportive techniques such as teleportation and telekinesis that he can use to completely overwhelm his opponents, and coupled with his high intellect, Nigrisshi most definitely will optimally use all of his tools at his disposal to exploit any weakness he can find in his enemies. If anything, his only real weakness is his arrogance and sense of superiority, which at times can be too much for his own good, but in any case, his confidence in himself and his abilities are completely justified, making him not only the strongest mortal of Universe 3, but also one of the most dangerous fighters of the Tournament of Power. Or at least, that's the case for our revision, because in the actual canon, Nigrisshi is just a complete disappointment. Which is really sad because I can see him having a lot of potential as an interesting fighter for the Tournament of Power, but we can't really do anything about it, so let's just move on. Now let's quickly go through the power level of Nigrisshi for our revision. And for that, we will be using what I call the Goku power level scale, where basically we compare each character's power level to any of the Goku transformations, so that way you can have a good idea how strong a character really is. So during the Tournament of Power, Nigrishi's base power level while using Semi-Divine Ki, which from now on we will just call Demigod Ki, is around 59. And to put that into perspective, this is equal to the power level of Goku in his Demigod Super Saiyan 2 form. At full power, while using Demigod Ki, Nigrishi's power level is 64, which is stronger than a Super Saiyan 3 Goku, but slightly weaker than the Super Saiyan God. When actually using Godly Ki, Nigrisshi have a power level of 76, which is almost equal to a perfected Super Saiyan Blue, which is 77 in case you don't remember. At full Godly power, his power increases to 82, which makes Nigrisshi raw power superior to the Super Saiyan Blue with limited Kaioken, but weaker than the same form while using the Max Kaioken, which is 84. Lastly, Nigrisshi is capable of overloading his Godly Ki generation, this with the purpose to surpass his usual limits. While using this overload power state, Nigrisshi have a power level up to 87, which is slightly weaker than the Ultra Instinct sign of Goku. It is very important to clarify that using this state requires so much energy from the android body of Nigrisshi that he doesn't have an unlimited energy anymore, at least not while using this very high power level. This overload state is Nigrishi's final trump card, meant to be used only to quickly defeat an opponent before his body is destroyed by the enemy. Because yes, he still has his regeneration, but recovering from damage requires a lot of energy. And Nigrisshi doesn't have an unlimited source of energy anymore with this state, so in short, this is the most powerful form of Nigrisshi, but also the most vulnerable. If for any reason he's forced to use the overload power state and his body is destroyed, then Nigrisshi is forced to escape with his consciousness to some backup body. Next is our first secondary fighter of Universe 3, Narirama, and he also was hyped to some extent as a potentially dangerous fighter for the Tournament of Power in the anime. But unlike Nigrisshi, Narirama actually got the spotlight even if it was just for 1 or 2 episodes, and it actually has some interesting abilities and techniques that we will be keeping. First, Narirama also possesses unlimited energy and stamina, and is a complete robot. As a result, his energy can be sensed through normal means. Narirama's signature technique is his ability to spin extremely fast. So fast, it creates a powerful wind currents, and it can even bend gravity, attracting everything in the surroundings towards Narirama itself, grinding them into pieces if the enemies are not strong enough. Additionally, Narirama can also use a defensive barrier which can be used in tandem with his spinning technique, increasing the power of the ability even more. Narirama also makes use of standard energy attacks, being capable of perfectly regulating his attacks depending on the situation. If necessary, he can fire powerful energy blasts to destroy huge areas, or can also use them in a much more focused way to precisely snipe enemies from far away. Despite being a robot and using a supercomputer as a brain to function, Narirama's intellect is really basic, more akin to a trained animal than the intellect of an average person. After all, Narirama's whole purpose is just to serve Universe 3 as a strong all-around fighter. With that in mind, what the supercomputer of Narirama actually does is increase its overall skill, allowing Narirama to perfectly execute its abilities and techniques. Furthermore, Narirama will fulfill its purpose of fighting enemies and defending Universe 3 and its teammates, even if it means Narirama's own destruction. In short, Narirama is a solid all-round fighter, capable of both offense and defense. And what's more, one of the biggest strengths of Narirama is supporting his allies, by tanking for them and providing heavy fire. Let's quickly go through Narirama power levels during the Tournament of Power. By using Demigod Ki, Narirama have a power level of 59, which is equal to Super Saiyan 2 Goku, and at full power Demigod Ki, Narirama have a power level of 66, which is equal to a Super Saiyan God. When using Godly Ki, Narirama have a power level of 70, which is equal to a fully powered Super Saiyan God, and when using Godly Ki at full power, Narirama have a power level of 78, which is slightly stronger than a perfected Super Saiyan Blue Goku. Next secondary fighter is Biarra, who, like Narirama, also got some spotlight in the anime, where his main trait as a fighter was his defensive capabilities, which we will be using to come up with a fighting style for Biarra. First, Biarra doesn't have an unlimited energy, but he is capable of absorbing energy, and not just ki energy, but pretty much any type, including energy used by robots and cyborgs, natural energy such as electricity and solar energy, and can even absorb magical energy, a lot of energy. Biarra requires to have direct contact with the source of energy to absorb it, but unlike other characters in canon, Biarra doesn't just absorb energy from his hands, but his entire body. What's more, Biarra sacrificed the attribute of speed for far more defensive capabilities, making him incredibly tanky against physical attacks. So naturally, in combination with his energy absorption ability, Biarra is extremely durable and can mitigate any kind of attack. Although Biarra's defensive abilities are top-notch, his offensive capabilities are not slouch either, especially when it comes to energy attacks, possessing plenty of powerful offensive techniques. But as I mentioned before, Biarra sacrificed speed to increase his endurance, and by adding up his super heavy armor, Biarra's combat and movement speed is one obvious weakness, which definitely affects his overall offensive capabilities. It's clear that Biarra excels at defense, being one of the finest defensive fighters in the entire Tournament of Power. Despite his speed issues, Biarra is decently skilled and smart enough to fight on his own strengths than letting others abuse his weakness. With Demigod Ki, Biarra have a power level of 56 and 62 at the strongest, which is slightly stronger than base Goku and stronger than Super Saiyan 3 Goku at full power. With Godly Ki, Biarra have a power level of 66, which is equal to a Super Saiyan God Goku, and at full godly power, a level of 72, which is equal to an unmastered Super Saiyan Blue Goku. Biarra also possesses energy cells in his armor, which he can activate to temporarily increase his power. These energy cells are recharged when Biarra absorbs energy. Each energy cell increases Biarra power by 2 digits, and during the tournament, Biarra only possesses a couple, granting him a power level of 76 when activating both, making him slightly weaker than a perfected Super Saiyan Blue Goku. By adding to that, at the highest, Biarra have a power level of 80 after absorbing energy, which is equal to a Super Saiyan Blue while using a limited Kaioken. Of course, the increase of power by using energy cells or by absorbing energy are conditional, which affects its reliability. The last secondary fighter of Team 3 is the Preecho, an odd-looking fighter that we barely know anything about in canon since he did nothing during the Tournament of Power arc. Personally, I find his design intriguing and makes me think of an alternative version of Perfect Cell, one with an appearance more similar to the imperfect form. Because of that, I gave the Preecho some abilities similar to what Cell had, but still distinct enough for Preecho to not just be a Temu version of Cell. The core specialty of the Preecho are his numerous stingers that he can use to penetrate the enemies and even allies, with the purpose to not only deal damage but to temporarily assimilate their abilities and techniques. Preecho can freely create these stingers, which not only works on biological creatures but also on robotic ones. And also, it is not limited in assimilating key techniques but also magical ones. The Preecho also possesses a second more powerful method of assimilation, which is using his hidden tail that, in a similar way to Imperfect Cell, possesses a stinger that can be used to not only copy all the abilities and techniques of the target, but also can even assimilate their power level to some extent. Now, the assimilation of power level does possess a limit, which is directly tied to the potential that the Preecho have at that particular time. For example, during the Tournament of Power, the Preecho potential to increase his power is up to 77 at most. So in theory, if the Preecho is capable of penetrating with his tail a perfected Super Saiyan Blue Goku, then the Preecho will have the same power level as this form. But if somehow the Preecho is capable of penetrating with his tail a perfected Ultra Instinct Goku, then he will still be able to copy all his abilities, but the power level won't increase to the same level as Goku's, and will only increase up to 77 since that is Preecho max potential. Another mechanic of the assimilation capabilities of the Preecho is that he can copy the abilities and techniques of multiple fighters at the same time, and he can pick and choose which one to use depending on the situation. When it comes to the base abilities of the Preecho, he's actually incredibly skilled and smart. After all, it is necessary to properly understand and use all kinds of copied abilities. So in short, the Preecho have 2 methods of assimilating abilities and power. The first, an easy one, is using stingers as projectiles, which upon penetrating the target, it allows Preecho to copy techniques and abilities. He can only use copied abilities for a short period of time, and can't copy overly complex techniques. The second method that the Preecho have to assimilate techniques is using his tail, which is more powerful but also more dangerous to use. If the Preecho can penetrate with his tail the target, he can copy altered techniques, abilities, and even physical traits for a much longer period of time. Additionally, with this method, he can even assimilate the power level of the target, although the increase of power depends on the current potential of the Preecho. When it comes to power level, the Preecho when using Demigod Ki have a base power of 56, which is slightly stronger than base Goku, and at full Demigod power, Preecho have a level of 60, which is nearly equal to Super Saiyan 3. With Godly Ki, the Preecho have a power level of 70, equal to a fully powered Super Saiyan God, and by assimilating the power of a target, Preecho can increase his power at a maximum of 77 as mentioned before. Next is our first main fighter of Team 3, Katopesla, who personally I found the most interesting member of the team after Nigrisshi, and we actually got to see what his fighting style is like in the anime, so we have something to work with. Katopesla is essentially a super police from Universe 3 that uses a suit to enhance his power and use different modes. He is basically a Power Ranger. Katopesla's core abilities revolves around using his different combat modes, which grants a good level of adaptability to his fighting style. The base mode of Katopesla have the standard key techniques such as energy attacks, flying, and key reading. On top of that, the suit grants camouflage, energy barriers, radars, regeneration, and the ability to conjure weapons such as a laser gun and electric baton. The two modes of the suit increases overall power, but also increases speed even more in the case of the Rush mode, and in strength and endurance when using the Brawl mode. Katopesla can quickly change between these two modes, although he uses this in a sporadic way, since constantly exchanging between modes can overheat the suit and waste a lot of energy. When using Godly Ki, the suit base mode grants the ability of telepathy and healing others. The Rush mode with Godly Ki allows Katopesla to create portals for teleportation, and Brawl mode with Godly Ki grants powerful telekinesis. Additionally, with Godly Ki, Katopesla can use the Ultimate mode, which increases the power quite a lot, but also Katopesla can use the ability of portal creation and telekinesis at the same time. The only downside is that Ultimate mode overheats the suit, which limits its standard use. Katopesla is the best intergalactic police of Universe 3, and as such, he has become incredibly skilled at fighting. Additionally, as an experienced field commander, Katopesla uses plenty of strategies and tactics during combat, and also acts as a powerful leader with an unbreakable will, making him not only a formidable fighter, but also a powerful commander. The power level of Katopesla without using his suit is 54, making him slightly weaker than base Goku. When using the police combat suit, his power level increases to 58, which is equal to a Goku Super Saiyan, and by using either the Rush or Brawl mode, Katopesla overall power increases to 60, almost equal to a Super Saiyan 3. But by taking in consideration solely the speed or strength and endurance of Rush mode or Brawl mode respectively, it will be equal to a Super Saiyan God with a power level of 66. When the suit is using Godly Ki, Katopesla have a power level of 69, which is slightly weaker than a fully powered Super Saiyan God. The Godly Rush and Brawl modes increases overall power up to 75, which is near to the power of a perfected Super Saiyan Blue Goku. And by taking in consideration solely the speed and strength of the modes, it will have a power level of 80, equal to a Super Saiyan Blue with limited Kaioken. Finally, the Ultimate mode have an overall power of 84, equal to a Super Saiyan Blue with maximum Kaioken. The last main fighter of Universe 3 is Maji Kayoo, who had the spotlight briefly in the anime. He was able to pin down Dispo and going up against no other than Jiren himself. With that being said, Maji Kayoo have a pretty clear fighting style, which we'll be using as a basis for this video. So for starters, Maji Kayoo's body is made of liquid metal, and he can control its shape and form freely, granting Maji Kayoo a lot of flexibility when it comes to fighting. Being able to change his body to many types of weapon, either to be used as projectiles or to be used in melee combat. And of course, he can freely choose to harden his liquid metal or not. What's more, Maji Kayoo options are not limited to just offensive. He can also separate parts of his body to create clones for whatever purpose he needs. He is also capable of regenerating, and probably the most dangerous ability of Maji Kayoo is shape-shifting. Capable of mimicking not only the appearance of objects, of which he can use to hide or ambush an enemy, but he can also take the appearance of other creatures, which is excellent to infiltrate enemy lines. This is not only good for the recopilation of enemy intel, but also is a powerful assassination tool at Maji Kayoo's disposal. It is important to clarify that Maji Kayoo can only mimic the appearance of someone, cannot mimic their personality nor their ki, so to avoid getting caught by the enemies, Maji Kayoo shouldn't use his ki until the perfect moment to attack. All in all, Maji Kayoo can be a tough opponent to defeat due to his unique body properties, being especially strong at melee combat. Maji Kayoo doesn't shy away from fighting dirty, either using intimidation tactics or using his shape-shifting abilities to make his enemies to lower their guard. With that being said, let's go through the power levels of Maji Kayoo. In his depowered state, which is the form Maji Kayoo have when he loses too much of his liquid metal and don't have enough energy to regenerate, have a power level of 51, which is much weaker than a base Goku. In his base form, Maji Kayoo have a power level of 57, slightly weaker than a Super Saiyan Goku. Maji Kayoo have a super form, where his body possesses much more liquid metal, increasing his size and strength as well, having a power level of 62, making it stronger than a Super Saiyan 3. By using Godly Ki, Maji Kayoo have a base power of 67, which is slightly stronger than a Super Saiyan God. And in his Super Godly form, he have a power level of 77, being equal to a perfected Super Saiyan Blue. Finally, for our revision, Maji Kayoo have another transformation where the liquid metal of his body acquire an additional ability, which allows Maji Kayoo to increase his power by consuming matter with his metallic body. This new silver metal consumes any kind of matter very quickly, except for the body of powerful fighters that are protected by their ki and can slow down the consumption rate. This metal form of Maji Kayoo have a power level of 81, which is slightly stronger than a Super Saiyan Blue with limited Kaioken, and by increasing his power even more after consuming matter, the power increases up to 85, which is slightly stronger than a maximum Kaioken Super Saiyan Blue. Although this boost of power is hard to get to, since it's conditional on consuming a large amount of matter. Next, we are exploring our first support fighter, and also one of the key members of Universe 3 team, Paparoni. In the anime, Paparoni didn't do much directly, but he was the creator of the robot trio and also was part of the Anilasa fusion, so he was actually very important for Team 3. For what we can safely assume is that Paparoni have a great intellect enough to be capable of creating very powerful robots, and also was shown to have a staff during the Tournament of Power. Now, how he was allowed to have a staff in the Tournament of Power even though it was banned to have weapons, I have no idea, but that's besides the point. So with that in mind, we will establish that Paparoni's intellect is equal to that of Nigrisshi, although they use their intellect for different purposes. In the case of Paparoni, he is more of a proper inventor, not too interested in direct fighting, unlike Nigrisshi, which is reflected in the relative low power level of Paparoni and low martial arts skills. But that's not to say that Paparoni is completely helpless in a fight. He has plenty of tools that greatly improve his defensive and supportive capabilities. The main tool that Paparoni uses for all his abilities is his staff, which serves as a multi-purpose device and could be considered his main source of power. One of the purposes of the Techno Staff is to create incredibly powerful energy shields that can be used to protect Paparoni and allies. The Techno Staff, and by extension Paparoni, don't possess unlimited energy, but it does recharge energy quite fast whenever it's not being used. The Techno Staff can also be used to scan for any type of data Paparoni wants, including power level and weaknesses or strengths of a fighter, although it is not limited on scanning living beings, but can really be used on anything at all. The Techno Staff can also be used to project holograms, which can even work as illusions to confuse the opponent. Other functions of the staff includes an anti-gravity beam, user teleportation, portal creation, telepathy with mechanical and cyber creatures, reparation, and minor healing. It also allows Paparoni to use his mental abilities for telekinesis. Finally, the staff possesses a very advanced AI created by Paparoni, meaning that it can work by itself without a direct command of its owner. In summary, Paparoni mostly relies on using supportive techniques than direct combat, preferring using his robots at front while he provides support mainly with his repairing ray and anti-gravity beam. The power level of Paparoni is 50, which is considerably weaker than demigod base Goku. And while using the Techno Staff to increase his power, Paparoni has a power of 54, slightly weaker than base Goku. Paparoni also possesses a combat suit that provides extra defense and strength to his relative fragile body, which grants him a power level of 58 equal to a Super Saiyan Goku. Next is the second support fighter of Universe 3 and also the first of the robots trio, Borareta. In the anime, Borareta was shown to be decently strong, especially when fighting in synchronization with his teammates' robots, so we are going to use that as a starting point to expand upon Borareta. Borareta fulfills the role of support for the robot trio, mainly staying behind the front lines while his teammates do all the damage. The design of Borareta is not suited for direct combat, so it trades strength for much more defense in case enemies decide to target him instead of his allies. Unlike the other two of the trio, Borareta does possess unlimited energy and he shares his energy to the other two whenever they are in need, pretty much acting as an energy battery for his allies. The eyes of Borareta also possess very advanced and powerful scans, similar to the one used by Paparoni, which Borareta uses to find weaknesses in enemies and share the information to his robotic allies telepathically. The power level of Borareta is 50 and at full power is 55, being equal to demigod base Goku. When Borareta is in synchrony with the rest of the robot trio, then his power increases up to 59, which is equal to a Super Saiyan 2 Goku. Following, we have the backup fighter Koitsukai, who is part of the robot trio of Universe 3. For our revision, Koitsukai main fighting style and purpose is to attack enemies from the distance, using his superior speed to avoid melee combat. Koitsukai can transform his hands into powerful propulsors that increases his speed even more than normal, but can also be used to fire energy attacks, which is his primary way of attacking. Koitsukai have a base power of 52, being weaker than base Goku, and at full power a level of 57, slightly weaker than Super Saiyan Goku. Unlike Borareta, Koitsukai uses Godly Ki with a power level of 60, nearly equal to a Super Saiyan 3 Goku, and when fighting in synchronization with his two robots teammates, his power increases to 66, equal to Super Saiyan God Goku. The last backup fighter and third robot of the trio is Pancea. Unlike the other two, Pancea possesses a body more adapted for melee combat, which is exactly what Pancea is specialized for, and being the strongest of the trio, in terms of raw power at least, he basically serves as the main fighter of the robot trio. He have a base power level of 53 and 58 at full demigod power, which is equal to a Super Saiyan, and with Godly Ki, Pancea have a power level of 61, equal to a Super Saiyan 3 Goku. When fighting in synchronization with his two teammates, his power increases to 67, being slightly stronger than Super Saiyan Gold. So that should be it for all the fighters of Team 3, and as a short clarification, I'll be making a separate video for all the fusions, including Anirasa, Kefla, Gogeta, and so on. Now let's quickly go through the main gods of Universe 3, starting with the Kaioshin of Universe 3, which I'm not exactly sure what his name is. Is it Ea or Air? So I would just call him Enki because I don't know, it's cooler, so the Kaioshin Enki. Enki is one of the smartest Supreme Kais and definitely the one with the most knowledge in technology and science. Beyond that, his fighting style is very similar to most Kaioshin, using psychic powers such as telekinesis and telepathy, and also magic spells like healing and teleportation. The one thing that Enki stands out from other Kaioshin is his mastery over the magic spell of conjuration, being able to create out of thin air highly technological devices for any purpose needed. Beyond that, the offensive capabilities of Enki are average, as is for most Supreme Kais. The base power level of Enki is 76, being slightly weaker than perfected Super Saiyan Blue, and while using magic with Ultra Affinity, his power level is 83, which is slightly weaker than a maximum Kaioken Super Saiyan Blue Goku. In his creator form, Enki have a power level of 90, which is stronger than Ultra Instinct Sign, but it is very limited since it's forbidden to be used for combat. Next is the God of Destruction Mule, who is the most knowledgeable of the gods of destruction, not too much unlike Enki. Although unlike his Kaioshin, Mule is actually a great fighter as well, having plenty of experience and skill. The one trait that makes Mule stand out from other Hakaishin is his usage of robots, specifically nanomachinery. These nanomachines are what gives form to the robot named Moscow, which is the robot that Mule usually uses. Moscow can change to virtually an unlimited amount of forms for different specific functions. He has so many forms that it will take just too long to go into detail with each one, so let's quickly go through the most useful ones, starting with defensive mode, which increases the resistance to any kind of attacks but makes Moscow much slower. Speed mode increases combat speed but also allows Mule to travel in any environment such as space or underwater. The next one is Siege mode, which Mule uses to blow up entire worlds from planets away of distance. There is also Stealth mode, which conceals any type of energy that Mule have, and also have camouflage. And there is Construction mode, a bit of a weird one for a God of Destruction, but Mule actually used this mode to create new robots for himself. Despite the many forms of Moscow, Mule usually just used the standard one, which is all around good, especially for combat. The base abilities of the robot Moscow includes fast regeneration, energy absorption, and enhanced sensory capabilities. Obviously, as a Hakaishin, Mule can use the power of destruction, and by extension his robot Moscow can channel it as well. One of the most dangerous techniques of Moscow is using nanomachines to infiltrate inside the body of the enemy and completely destroy them with Hakai by channeling the power of destruction through the nanomachines. This technique can be extremely effective if the enemy is not aware that the nanomachines are inside them. The power level of Mule is 88, which is equal to Ultra Instinct Sign, and by using Ultra Ego, his power can increase up to 90. With the Destroyer form, his power level increases to 93, making it stronger in raw power than perfected Ultra Instinct Goku. But the Destroyer form is limited by the difficulty of using it optimally, and it can also be only used with the permission of the Angel.
finally, we have the angel of Universe 3, Camparri. There is not much to say about these angel abilities that I haven't said previously about other angels, since they are pretty similar. As all angels, Camparri uses the energy of spirit or soul, which is the perfect fusion of godly ki and genki energy. He also mastered Ultra Instinct and have access to the destruction power. He's also capable of warping reality and controlling aspects of life and death. With a base power level of 97, Camparri is part of the higher tier of angels in terms of power, and by using the angelic form, Camparri have a power level of 99, although this form can only be used with the permission of the Grand Crest. So that should be it for Universe 3 team, and for our next video, we will be exploring the second to last team we had left to do, the Team of Love from Universe 2. Alright guys, see ya next time. Remember to subscribe, to give like and all of that. Even just a comment will be very much appreciated. Goodbye everyone, have a great day, see ya next time.